Bronco, you told me you were going to finish at sunset and finished right before sunset. How are you feeling today?
Uh, Worked. I feel very worked, but I'm satisfied.
Yeah, you satisfied with the second place finish?
Well, it's a little bittersweet, um, but second phase, I'll take it. It still was a fast time, so I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. This year was going to be wild. I think everyone knew the year was going to be crazy with like the amount of talent coming into the race, and then just watching the race play out. I think everybody was kind of on the edge of their seats, and like kind of like apart from Cocodona, it's just interesting to see like how competitive 200s have gotten recently. So it was cool to see that and have Jamil live stream everything. It was just absolutely insane. It was a wild few days.
Yeah. The live feed is kind of gone up a notch every year since it's the fourth year of the race. You know, it culminated in building a huge field in the men's race, for sure. Like very deep of like not only really fast people, but fast guys especially, but like also a whole group of veterans that have done a lot of 200s and have experience. That, as we're seeing today, is what we looked at the top 10. The last half of the top 10 was all veterans, mopping people up at the end.
Yeah, it was super interesting to see how that all played out. I think a lot of people had predictions, but also it's 250 miles. You never really know what's going to happen in a race.
It is a very unpredictable race, and it's a race that's constantly evolving on the move, because you don't know where you're going to be maybe necessarily, and like what's a night section versus what's a day section depending on your pace. So, you know, having contingency plans and all that kind of stuff is very important. I guess logistics.
Yeah, logistics are huge in a race like this. Like they're big in basically any event, I feel like, but even more so once it gets kind of like drawn out lengthwise.
Yeah.
But before we jump into all that, I think it's important to talk about like basically like your build up and lead into Cocodona 250. Not necessarily like just the training into it, but like the years of planning essentially that you've had for it. Because you ran Moab 240, and then you did Sedona Canyons 125 last year, and here you are kind of like culminating in a lot of ways at Cocodona 250. So let's talk about that. Like, has Cocodona 250 always been kind of like a long-term goal for you?
Absolutely long-term goal. You know, I moved here the year it started. So I moved here 2 months before that first year race. And with Air Vipin and Jamil and all that group just doing this live feed and having live coverage, and I think is it just really makes it grow and eyes on it really, really fast, which makes it really fun. And being here, I've had athletes in the 250 every year. I've coached back of the pack, middle of the pack, front of the pack. And I really love the whole atmosphere they created with this race. And when they added the 125 last year, I was like, well, that's a scouting trip, a scouting run for the 250. Cause I knew, since it finishes in Flagstaff and it's in my backyard, and I run a ton of the trails that are on the course, a lot. And I was like, I have to do the race. I mean, it's my backyard. If you have a backyard race, you have to like check that box. So, and it's a cool race too. It's a great event, and it's really handled very well too.
Yeah, like it's interesting to see like how live streaming has progressed so much. Like, not to get too much into this, but I find it really fascinating, probably because I work in media.
Yeah.
But like I remember like kind of the initial things with, I think it was Ultra Sports Live TV, where it was just kind of like a static camera just showing runners, and then it wasn't that exciting, but it was kind of cool to like just to see a camera feed somewhere.
Yeah.
And then now like how Jamil stepped that up and Starlink has been very beneficial for that in a lot of ways. But he's put in a lot of time and effort, and I think it's grown the sport in so many ways, because you can watch like this monster race happening and see real-time updates, and the volunteers help a lot too. Obviously, he has a huge staff of people helping, and I couldn't name everybody helping him. Bryce Brooks and all these other guys that are helping him are just done an amazing job. But like Jamil's really taking that initiative, and just to give him kind of a shout out, it's like pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool what he's doing for the sport and the live coverage, especially this year. I mean, you kind of really you really start to see the work and the infrastructure they've put together to get ready for this. Like my crew said that the coverage, like everyone's just glued to phones constantly, and now with Starlink, right, you can be glued to a phone video anywhere, and so there's just so much.
Yeah, it makes it super fun and exciting, because like it was kind of like, I don't know.
You want me to kick her out?
She's fine.
Okay.
If you're just listening, there's a cat walking around, but she's cool. I don't remember what I was going to say now, but it's just so cool to be able to follow running live and like have all these people commenting and just like talking about stats and stuff. And it really draws people into the sport. It's just great for the sport in general. I think it's great for professional athletes, but also just normal athletes as well. And it makes it really fun and exciting where you can kind of passively watch or be glued to the TV as a lot of people.
Well, I mean, every year Cocodona 250 has been like, it's like the week.
Yeah.
Like I've had athletes in it and I'm like watching it. I've got it on my side monitor when I'm working and writing plans during the week. And I'm running back and forth to the finish line to see athletes finish. So it's just a fun week. It's just like, you know, it's like a ultra running party week.
Yeah, for sure. It's cool to see everybody just like stoked on it all the time. It's just, I don't know, I feel like everybody's doing that same thing. They're at work, probably not doing a lot of work, but actually watching Cocodona. Yeah, cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about how so you ran Moab 240 2 years ago now, right? Set the course record out there. It was awesome. And you came in with a plan, changed a little bit on the fly because it's 240 miles. It was also your first dabble at that distance.
Yeah.
And it went well. You got the course record. And then Sedona Canyons 125 last year. That was an incredible race. It was fun. Like you're saying, it was kind of like a 125-mile training run for Cocodona 250. So what takeaways did you have from Moab 240, Sedona Canyons 125, and how did you apply those to Cocodona 250?
Ask that again because my brain is completely not absorbing. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, do that again.
It's the day after
It's the day after the race.
We're all pretty tired.
I slept like 4 or 5 hours and then another fitful 1 or 2. So I'm still tired.
For sure. I'm fairly tired too. But so you ran Moab 240, came in with a game plan, and it, for the most part, executed it like spot on. You had a few like little hiccups, but that's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, we evolved on the fly in that race.
Yeah, for sure.
And learned.
And having George there, who knows you so well. George is your crew, man.
Yeah, and I had a huge lead, so there's no pressure.
Yeah.
So we could learn things and take extra naps and do all that kind of stuff. But I still wanted the course record, so there was still a motivator there. But it was a really good learning experience. And I used basically the same crew with some additions with pacers and stuff, but the same base crew in this race.
Yeah, like we actually, you and I and George Plumerity did a show like a year or so ago about crewing and pacing. And,
yeah.
And I think that really just shows like how important your crew can be in a competitive race. And as these 200s get more competitive, it's like, okay, those minutes in the aid station matter. You can't take a shower anymore at an aid station. It's like, you got to kind of roll through that.
Yeah.
But then so coming into Cocodona this year, you had these plans and things you learned from Moab, from Sedona Canyons, and it seemed like you were just dialed. Like when we were here filming, so we're filming that project for Ultra about just you being in the sport for so long. You're 52 now, right?
Yeah.
And you have many years of experience in ultras, and so when I was at your house, or we're at your house now in your backyard, but you had everything dialed, like spreadsheets, drop bags, crew, everything was like to the T. So
yeah, the crew even has like bulleted items like this, I need this at this aid station. They can refer to the notes. We have an approximate time of day I'm going to get there. This year we had to evolve really quick because I was like 4 hours ahead of my splits by the end. So we went a lot faster than we thought, right? Because no one's gone this fast on this course, on this final course that they kind of have set now.
Yeah, and I think it was very clear that even Air didn't know how fast people were going to run because we're basically like on the pointy end of the pack. Like you're way up there. You're 3 to 4 miles ahead of his name, Harold Harry, who ended up winning the race eventually. But like the aid stations weren't even
bittersweet.
Yeah, and we're definitely
like I said, man, getting past with 2 miles to go because you can't breathe is a bittersweet lose.
Yeah.
To get second, I have to say.
Yeah,
for the record, is a little bittersweet. I do love like performing, but man, to have it like tasting it and not get it, course record and a win, but nope.
Yeah, and like it was so interesting to see the race evolve because obviously so you had told me that you wanted to finish at sunset. It was kind of a joke, but also serious.
Sub sunset. Don't want to turn my lights back on.
Exactly, yeah. Like for the record, but then also the visuals are cooler at sunset with nice light, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so you ended up running 60, 19, 57, and which includes the 2 miles of walking there at the end. And it was just so interesting how you led for how many miles of the race? Like 100?
I took over at like 90 something.
Yeah.
And got caught with 2 miles to go. It's a lot of miles to lead a race. Oh my gosh.
Which is absolutely insane to like think about.
I don't know, what was that, 150 something? 150 miles I led?
Yeah, you can do basic math right now. You're still good at that.
It's ballparking it.
Just ballparking, a little round in there. Yeah, like that was just wild because like we were essentially like, so I was leapfrogging around all day. George and Jen were crewing you, and it was like fairly like alone most of the day. Like we'd show up at the aid stations, and there's just kind of nothing set up, and it's like no fault to anybody. It's just it was just a lot faster than expected. I remember waiting in Jerome, and like Patty, Jamil's mother, showed up, and it's like, oh, we got to wait for the state park people to come to open up the gate because it's just they weren't expecting anybody to be there that early.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. I'm beating the state park people opening the gate.
Yeah, we drove down from Mingus, and we pulled up, we're like, oh, the gate's closed. And then Patty showed up. She's like, yeah, the state park guy doesn't want to show up till his shift begins at 8 o'clock. So we had to wait, which was kind of stressful. But George had like a contingency plan essentially. Like, okay, like if Jeff comes in, like we're gonna crew right out of the truck and just kind of carry on from there.
Yeah, which we had the ability to do.
Yeah, I think it just kind of really validates the reason to have like a good crew that knows what to do.
If you want to run fast, you have to have a good crew.
Yeah,
it's literally like a pit crew sometimes. In some instances, it gets you in and out. You can get so much done in a very little amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just jump into the race. Like I think people just want to hear about that. Like, so Sunday night, you guys drove down from Flag. George flew in from Oregon, I believe.
On Friday.
Okay, on Friday. So you guys kind of had some planning beforehand. You went to race check-in on Sunday, which was just, it was windy, whatever, but like, it is what it is. It's not that exciting to talk about, honestly. Yeah. So we all went to bed fairly early that night, and everything all prepped up. Truck was prepped, breakfast was prepped, everything's just like planned to the T. So we woke up at 3 a.m. Let's just kind of start from there. Like, how'd you feel waking up that morning?
I slept okay. I woke up once in the night and kind of bounced around in my head for half an hour, but then it was three things that I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. And so I put them in my notes in my phone, and then my brain chilled out and went back to sleep. But I probably got 6 hours of sleep, 5:45, 6. That's pretty good considering it's a, for me, a 3:15 a.m. wake up. So that's early. And anyway, actually 3:30. I think I woke up at 3:30.
Okay.
No, I don't even remember now, man. My brain.
It's inconsequential. It's 15 minutes.
3:20. That's what it was. It was 3:20. Okay. Anyway, we went to bed early. Yeah. We got there that morning. You're right. They had like a 10-minute delay on the start, just due to so many people like coming to get their tracker, and it took longer than expected, and so not everyone was ready to start. So they just did a 10-minute delay. But it ended up not being as hot to Crown King. That first 37 is kind of notoriously really hot. It was hot, but it was kind of, there was a breeze. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as a normal year. So I think that one of the reasons that our times were so fast, that we got kind of a lucky day on day one. I'm not sure that course you could go, if it was a really hot first 37, you'd have to go slower in that first day. So, you'd probably come in maybe 45 minutes to an hour later than I split this year. Mm-hmm. But, maybe not. But I think that probably would slow it down a little bit.
Definitely. Like after the start and everything, which was actually really pleasant out that morning, I was really surprised, especially considering how windy it was the few days prior to the event. It was just like insane wind. Yeah. And I just went straight to Crown King, so I was going to shoot some B-roll for the film, and I wanted to get there before it was just kind of hectic and chaotic up there. And when I pulled up, when I was driving up the mountain, you just slowly see the temperature dropping on my truck thermometer. And I got up there, I think it was like 36 degrees. So it was pretty chilly. But then I was just thinking though about how like in years past, it was so dang hot on that climb up to Crown King. And so yeah, I think it's like really a big blessing that you guys had such a cool year. And
it would be a different race if it was a really hot, like if it was 10 degrees hotter, 8 to 10 degrees hotter, it would be a totally different first day.
Yeah.
You'd have to respect it, as far as like doing that section. Probably carry another liter of water.
Yeah, because how many liters of water did you carry up that? Because
I left, you have to leave the first aid station at 7 and change. You have to leave there with a minimum of 4 liters. So they check you in the morning, make sure you can carry 4 liters. But I left with 4.8. But the first day, there was a water only at like 10 or 11. And I was planning on filling there, but I had not drank hardly any of my water. So I didn't fill there, and I was okay. I did have to, someone had stolen the water at the water only at 25 gallons that they had stashed there. So when we got there, we were supposed to get a liter ration, and I only got a half liter ration. But I had a filter, so I filtered there's a little barely a trickling creek there at that water only. So I filtered an extra, probably like 500 milliliters there. So I got my liter ration. But if it had been a hot day, it would have been a different story. I think, you have to carry even more water.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was a water issue there. No one mentioned that.
Yeah. Luckily it wasn't a hot day, so half a liter wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, I guess it is also a blessing too that it's been fairly wet the past month or two, and a fairly wet winter. So like everything up on Crown King and the Bradshaws is flowing, which is really beneficial. So how'd you feel going up though into Crown King? Because like we got up there, we're waiting, and like there's coverage, but it's kind of spotty in those areas. So like, how was that?
It was good. It was just kind of cruising still. It's early. You're just letting the miles fly by and trying to just be chill and take care of yourself. We were kind of pretty quickly in and out of Crown King. So it was, fast transition. Then I was on the Senator Highway on the way to Prescott from there.
Yeah, that section, like I drove up the road until it got way too narrow for my trucks. I drove up like 4 or 5 miles out of Crown King. At least it felt that far. The road is pretty bumpy and rocky and slow.
It was dusty at times because there was vehicles on it every once in a while. And you'd just be in a fine dust cloud for a bit.
Yeah.
In some places.
It was windy, and so that powder was just like whipping around, like kind of like not a tornado, but like kind of that similar aspect, right?
Yeah.
Visually. So like, what was it like going up there? Because it was warming up at that point. It wasn't hot by any means, but it was warm, and you're at altitude.
Yeah, it's warm and it's exposed. There's a lot of dirt road sections through there that are in an old burn or a burn. And I think that's the burn that came through that like had the race rerouted in 2022. So it's all like exposed too. So still like trying to stay out of the sun, arm sleeves and bandana and hat and everything. So just trying to, not overheat. It's just kind of a monotonous section a little bit. It's pretty, but it's like, it's actually nice at first because it's like you've been in really rocky stuff, and then all of a sudden you're on smoother stuff, and then the smooth stuff gets old too. But it's good. I mean, I didn't really have any problems through there. All that, I just was trying to like take care of myself and go cruise through it.
Yeah, like that.
There's obviously no pushing.
Yeah, especially that early on in the race, you still have like a day and a half, 2 days worth of racing at that point. And yeah, so it was cool to see you there, and I saw basically all like the kind of well-known guys at that point because the race is still so fresh. Like I saw McKnight, Versteeg, Garmeyer, Joe McConaughey, who else was up there? Harry. Everybody was up there, and I was flying drone. I could see everybody. It was like within like I could see you, flip the drone around and see somebody else. Like everybody was that close at that point. Like it was definitely like everyone's taking it easy, but it was still like race mode for sure. But from there, I drove around over to Prescott and up to Camp Kippa area. So the whole section, I don't really know like what happened. Like Joe was leading the race at that point, and I was kind of hanging out in the forest waiting for him. So like, what was going on like with you at that point? Like you're obviously doing fine, but like, what's that section like between kind of Crown King and Camp Kippa?
It's mostly dirt road. There's a couple of little single track sections that you have to climb up and over this little kind of ridgy wooded area that you have to pop over, and then you hit back onto road to come down to Kippa. That section had some dusty sections. Again, we were talking about the issue with dust. I think in hindsight, I wish I would have taken my bandana and like tied it, because I had it like draping out, and I wish I would have taken it and put it around and just turned my hat backwards and put it up like a, old school West, villain, like gonna rob the bank, or something. I needed something like when something drove by, and get that thing around and like put it up over just to filter all that fine. I think that's what contributed to the lung stuff.
Yeah.
Later. But anyway, that section's, you're just trying to get through it. It's a long, kind of grindy, rolly section. I was with Versteeg that whole time. We were hanging out, talking about being a dad and adventures and stuff like that. And so it was a good time to get to know him because, he and I we've been talking on text. We were supposed to train together. We never made it happen. So we officially had not met person to person. And it was cool to hang out with him, get to know him for like 50 or 60 miles. It's cool. That's what's cool about our sport.
Definitely. Like that happens definitely like in like shorter races, but also
you're just cruising it at, conversational pace. You're just catching up, talking to each other, cruising along, taking care of each other. You're just taking care.
Yeah, it's like a perfect race strategy to like keep yourself in zone 2 or maybe even zone 1 at some points, just to like not push too hard that early on in the race. I think like the dust part is so interesting because like here in like Arizona, everything's dusty. Like my truck is disgustingly dirty. Like it's usually fairly dusty from things, but like every time I stopped anywhere, I was just like, I myself was hacking. I'm not even running. Like it's that dusty. Like I could just smell it coming through like into my truck. My camper's full of dust and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think
we
like,
even have crew hacking, you know, after the race.
yeah, George has been like coughing quite a bit just simply because you're just in dust like essentially the entire race.
Yeah.
Like you're driving in it, you're working in it, you're literally eating dust because it's in everything. And it's just kind of what it is. It's Arizona. And like, you know,
and May is windy, notoriously windy here.
Yeah. Yeah. As if you were at the, like the race check-in, and I think everyone saw that where it was just whipping and Howie, the photographer, was like holding things down because it was crazy windy.
Yeah.
But coming into Camp Kippa, like I think Joe McConaughey was looking like he looked good, but also looked a little like frantic. And maybe hopefully I'm not misinterpreting like how he felt, but like he came through and like I passed him, I was on the road with some just random people that lived up there and we were talking and they saw Joe and like he looked fresh and clean, but also was kind of like, where's the aid station at? And we were a couple miles from it at that point. And then you came by, I don't remember exactly how long later, and you looked good as well. Like you were happy, you were talking and everything. So like, and that's kind of almost evening the first day. It was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So like, how were you feeling at that point? And like, what's kind of going through your head, knowing that like you're still early on in the race, but like it's kind of
Harry and Stringbean went out pretty at a solid pace in the Bradshaws, the first 37, and had a little gap on us. So, and it was me and Killian Korth and Versteeg together. And then Versteeg and I kind of pulled ahead of Killian, and then I pulled ahead of Versteeg, and then I caught Harry at Camp Kippa. Basically, I passed him in the aid station.
Yeah, you were there at the same time, right?
Yeah. I got some eggs and what, you know, snarfed those down real quick and refilled stuff, and I was out. And so I passed him there, and then headed to Prescott. And that section to Prescott's like a lot of downhill running, and like gravel road running before you get into single track around whatever that lake is, and then come into town.
Yeah, and like I remember driving down that road and like the trackers are kind of inconsistent just with the trees and everything.
Yeah, it's pretty heavily treed. I saw some javelina in there. I had to scare them off the trail with a rock
really?
Under my headlamp. Yeah.
The javelinas are wild. Like I've seen them up here in Flag too, and like I always thought they were just like a Tucson thing, but they're all over the place. I've seen them at the canyon, and that's funny you saw them over there in Prescott too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so then from there, like this is dirt road, so like you're kind of like dirt road single track and stuff. And I'm forgetting the name of the aid station, like Camp
Wamata.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny name. And
Camp W.
Camp W, it's a better way to say it. It's easier. And so I pulled up there, saw a bunch of wildlife and stuff on the way, which is really cool. But not like stressing out, but I was a little like, okay, like this is turning into a race kind of at this point because everyone's still so close together. And then it's going to get dark and you're going to head to Whiskey Row there in a bit. And so I pulled up to that camp, and Drew Darby was there filming as well. He's working with Jamil and Dylan and Brooks. They're creating a film about the race, which is going to be super cool. And so we were waiting for you, were flying drone around and stuff, and you came in looking really good. So like, and that aid station is only like 5 miles before Whiskey Row.
I think it's like 9.
Is it 9?
9.5.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, I guess I'm way off. I should probably look at the stats more. I'm tired.
I'm almost sure it's a pretty good section.
Yeah. So how'd you feel coming into then? Like it's obviously like you're like 12, 13, 14 hours into the race at that point. The sun was going down. You left like with headlamps and stuff. Like, so you're feeling good knowing that you're almost Prescott and heading to Whiskey Row?
Yeah, I mean, and I hadn't done that section, so I was, you know, making sure I was just trying to pay attention to markers and stay on the course. You know, there's a lot of good trails in there, but there was a couple like where it was like, it seems like there's some places that are really well marked and some places that were like, just, I mean, that's kind of a 200 plus is the markers tend to be like kind of minimal. So because you have to have the GPX, and I had it on my phone and I had it on my watch, and I missed a couple of turns where I'd go like 100 yards and be like, whoops, and then go back. So there's a little bit of route finding through there just because it was the first time I've been through there. Now I know it pretty well, so I'll be familiar when I get back through. But came in there. I was looking forward to that aid station because I planned a shoe change, pick up a pacer to run that road section through Iron King and the Dells. So coming to Whiskey Row, I was just like looking forward to seeing my crew. It was evening, and I needed to, you know, we changed batteries. We had some issues with lights. I have a prototype light still. I need to get the production model because it's been used a lot. And so I had to swap a housing real quick. So it took a few extra minutes. We started to go down the street with my pacer, and he ran back and grabbed it and ran back to me. But then we just were setting into that big road. There's a big road pull through kind of Prescott, like north of downtown, and then over to the Granite Dells section.
Yeah, like before we jump into the Dells, because some drama happened there.
Yeah.
What you were saying about like having to route find a little bit, like in a 250-mile race, or 250-mile race, like that's a long ways. And you can't have a marker every like 100 meters or 50 meters or something. Like you really have to be self-sufficient. And in your words, you told me before, is like extreme ownership of your navigation, because like you're out there, you can't rely on your pacer. Like you have to know the route, and as much as you can, like have it scouted and know. And like if you make a mistake, like it's on you. It's not on the race director. It's not on your pacer. Like it's on you. So you have to kind of cover your bases as much as you can, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it helps to have a pacer in that section too, because it's nice, because it's road, so you get to catch up with someone for a bit and talk, and then like, and he helps route find as you go through all that. But like I said, the extreme ownership is important in races. Is something we coach, because it's like you don't let your pacer make decisions for you. You do. It's your responsibility. The pacer's there for extra backup, so he should be looking too, or she should be looking on their phone and at the route, and hey, we got a right turn coming up. But you are too, and you're ultimately responsible for staying on course. So, and we had a couple of missed turns in there too, where we went down a street wrong because it was hard to see the flag. It was like flipping at the right, and you couldn't see the reflector. And so we started to go down the road, and then we came back uphill like quarter block, and then like, oh, there we go that way, And then there was another spot when we went into before the Granite Dells. You get into this kind of like reserve down on like some wetland and a little creek. And that little section was like a little tricky, where the intersections in tall grass, we missed a turn. I was taking a gel and messing around, like looking down at my headlamp, and, we walked right by it.
Yeah, it's very possible. And like before we jump into the Dells, so Joe came in, or Stringbean, Joe McConaughey came into Whiskey Row, like looking pumped. Like he's usually a pretty like happy, like perky guy. And he came in just like stoked. The crowd was there. A lot of people were there on Whiskey Row. And I guess I'm not used to like Prescott on a Monday night, but like the bars were full. People were out there just hanging out, and it was like super fun. And coming to the aid station, he came in and like was pumped. He rolled out his caps for a minute and left, and just like ecstatic the whole time. Like he looked really fresh, and we're just kind of like, okay, like what's going on? Still early on in the race at this point, but you came in, get crewed. Obviously you had your little minor light issues, which weren't that big of a deal in the end. But what were the Dells like going in? Because you were in second place at that point, right?
Yeah, I was in second place, and we were getting reports Joe was up about 30 minutes. I gained a little bit on him through there because he took longer at the aid station. So the lead was less after that move. But then I did, when we came into this, like there's kind of this like reserve kind of like drainage above the lake in the Granite Dells. Like everything kind of comes down to a lake and then into a dam. So we were in that section is where we missed a turn for a second, but then we were coming, I had run that section as a scouting trip, and I knew it was hard to follow, but I had done it. So I knew the general direction through it and how it looked like. And so there's a lot of stuff came back to me quickly in the dark. But that was super beneficial. I'm glad I did that. But anyway, we were running on this like gravel pathway, getting really close to the parking lot where you drop into the granite of the Granite Dells, and where you're just following white dots at times, and then single track, and then white dots when you're on the rock. And we see headlamps coming, and I thought it was like, I told my pacer, oh, that must be like media. And then I see Joe's jersey under his headlamp, and he's following a pacer. And I say, hey, you guys are going the wrong way. And they're like, what? And so they had gone and got turned around in the Dells, because there's intersections everywhere, and there's little loops. And so somehow they had done a loop, come back onto the flags, and we're going backwards on the course in the dark. And we ran into them, and I was like, no, man, we're on the course. Like, you need to be going that way. I've run this. Like,
he's run it before too.
Yeah, right. He's run it too. So, but that's where it's funny. Mike Pacer and I had just talked about it, because he's a guy I coach that's like 30 years old, and he was like, man, I got it. I'm on the phone. Like, don't worry about it. I go, no. Extreme ownership. I am going to be on the route too, and you are there too. You should be on it, and I'll be on it. It's not it's my responsibility ultimately. It's on me. And we had just had that conversation like literally 15 minutes before we run into Joe. And so that's another example where you both should be like always checking, looking at your watch, because Joe's watch was telling him he was going backwards on the course. But sometimes you just like go, no, that can't be right. That can't be right. Something must be messed up, but it's telling you you're going the wrong way. So you got to turn around. You stop and like look and like get your bearings, zoom out, zoom in on your watch. That's why I have it on my phone too. Like I carry my phone with it and I have it on my watch. So I'm doing these are more for quick, but if it gets a little confusing or something doesn't add up like that, you stop, zoom out and go, okay, where am I? Oh, I'm like, how do we get back? We're going the wrong way.
Yeah, 100%. Like having like a plan A and a plan B, I think is very crucial for like long distance stuff, because like things are going to happen. And like, I don't know, like the dells themselves are confusing. Like even during the day, you're just following those dots on the granite. It can be kind of hard to navigate. So even more so at night. But like, yeah, it basically comes down to like, okay, you should know this section. And obviously it was a critical error that kind of maybe cost him the race potentially. In the long run.
That's possible.
It's just frustrating.
I mean, and it's the nature of our sport too, just being, we're going through crazy, like wild places that are like insane, like granite formations that you're running on top of, falling white dots. And they're just really tricky. There's so much route finding in there. Luckily I'd done it. So I was like, I knew kind of generally how they laid it out in the daylight, where the dots are, how they kind of zigzag sometimes up through the formations. And so we did a pretty good job of like pinpointing our way through it. And at that point we gapped Stringbean and his pacer a little bit. Joe kind of dropped off there. I'm sure he had a little funk. I would have, if it was me. I would have been like, oh man, I can't believe I just lost my lead, So anyway, I think we kind of got away from him in there, and then we kind of gapped him. And then you get onto like gravel pathway over to Fain Ranch. So you're running that forever. It's like flat, slightly uphill, not flat. I guess it looks flat, but it's slightly uphill. And so we were running that, and it's starting to get cold by then.
Yeah, like that part of the route, like I mean, the dells are hard at night. The granite dells are pretty hard, but then like kind of going through that, like that kind of falls flat where you have to slightly climbing, but then you're kind of like going cross, like what's the word? I can't think of it right now. Just kind of like off trail cross field, like through like fields, right? Like
you're bushwhacking.
Yeah, bushwhacking is what I'm looking for.
You're bushwhacking through like a pasture, basically, in a couple spots. Like, yeah. But on that section, there's one little. I guess that's after Fain.
Is that after Fain?
Yeah, because you run a pathway.
Okay.
All the way in, and then you do. Well, no, maybe there's one little section. There's one short section, and then you jump back on, and then I think everything's kind of running together in there, because that's when I took a nap. My first nap was at Fain Ranch, and then, but there's kind of like most of the harder pasture is after Fain Ranch, but there's a couple little sections. It might be two, if I'm remembering right. They're shorter, but it's really actually beneficial to have a pacer there, because you can fan out. You point a flag, and then you're like, you need to take a bearing with your like phone pointed to north. You're like, okay, we should be heading that general direction. We fan out like 40 yards, and we look for like the next flag. Every once in a while, it'll be on like a cattle trail. Like cattle will run when they're in a pasture. They're walk to water usually, point A to point B on the same trail and follow each other, and it'll become a little faint single track. So there was a lot of that we were picking up with flags, but then you lose it again for a while, and then you'd have to find it. So you're constantly doing that. And coming into Fain Ranch, you had to do a section like that. Yeah,
I remember when I saw you guys, like right before you hit actual Fain Ranch, like whatever property it is, like a, I don't know, fairgrounds or something, like you have to climb over a barbed wire fence and whatever. I was talking.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember I was like, hey guys, watch out, it's barbed wire. You're like, yeah, I know. We've done a bunch of these already.
Yeah, exactly.
It was kind of funny. But I was talking to Kevin, your pacer, and he was saying that it was helpful to be through there at night because you could see the reflective markers. Whereas going through during the day, those things could get hidden in the grass potentially. If they fall over, a little harder to see. But with the headlamp, you're kind of able to like navigate better at night, even though it's a little more tricky because of the technicality. But you can navigate better because of that. And you're also not in the heat, like midday, which is really nice.
Totally.
Yeah. So your plan was to sleep for what, 20 minutes at Fane Ranch,
30.
right? 30? Yeah, and how was that? Because you slept in the back of the truck. George was there, everything set up for you. It seemed pretty beneficial.
That was a really good sleep. So that I felt a lot better after that, a lot more alert. And you know, at that point, then I just had to make it to, because it got basically first light kind of going right as I was getting up Mingus. So it was really nice to be kind of fresh after a nap, because there's kind of a really easy to follow along this fence row for a while out of Fane in this pasture, but then it takes this right turn and it goes over this, just bushwhacks over this rocky, like there's no trail whatsoever. You're going between bushes and weaving. There's cactus everywhere, little cactus in the grass, like where the grass will be hiding it. And so you're just trying not to kick one of those, and like you're looking for the next flag. And I had my phone out multiple times in that section, you know, oh, I need to go like 30 yards to the right, you know, and I was constantly just taking a bearing on a flag and then taking a bearing on my phone and looking for the next flag.
Yeah, I remember when we left Fane Ranch, George and Jen and I drove up, like separate vehicles, but together, just up to Mingus. It was only like a 20-minute drive or something, but I kind of forgot you guys run next to that fence for a while, like along the road, and then you take that like kind of beeline straight up to Mingus. And I've been over there before, and it kind of sucks during the day, so I imagine the night is not super enjoyable. But then you go from like, you're kind of in the cold like valley, which for whatever reason it's cold. I don't know.
It's windy.
Is it pretty windy? Yeah, then you climb up Mingus, which gets pretty high. Like we showed up there, and like it's the same thing with going to Crown King from the start. Like you could see the temperature dropping on your truck thermometer. And we got up there, and I got out of my truck to talk to George, and I was like, holy crap, like instantly I was freezing the second I got out. So it was pretty chilly, and he had to kind of crew in that situation. And I drove a little bit further up to where after you leave the aid station, there's a stretch of single track where you drop down into Jerome. But like climbing up Mingus, like how did you feel? Because a lot of people say it's a pretty tough section.
I felt good there.
Yeah.
Like, because I just had a nap.
Okay.
I felt good climbing up it. You know, I had no problems. I had scouted that. At least from where you go out of the aid station at Fane, you follow the fence row and then bushwhack over to a road. And then you run this road over to where you get into the single track that climbs up.
Yeah.
We had parked at that single track, so we'd scouted that section. So I knew it, how it went. It zigzagged and kind of eventually comes up and gains a double track road up on top.
Yeah, I think your sleep strategy was interesting because you decided to sleep early, where some people like were posting like, hey, I'm not going to sleep at all this entire race. It's going to be competitive. I'm just going to push. And you were like, that sounds dumb. Like, I'm going to sleep early. So sleeping early so you could like feel
that's
good.
From coaching it. We've seen people we've seen front of the Packers like that don't sleep enough get like lose it in the second and last third. Like literally mentally, you don't have it. You're a zombie or you're hallucinating, and you want to keep hallucinations down to a minimum, and you want to be alert. So I didn't caffeine very much on day one, so I could sleep really well, and I was ready to sleep. When we hit that was perfect. I was out and like, boom, you know, and that really helped a lot. I was so alert going up Mingus, and then the run down to Jerome, you know, in the morning. And then you get to run off Mingus in the daylight too, which helped.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
I would not want to do that at night.
Oh, that would be terrible to do that section.
It's bushwacky too. It's overgrown in a few spots.
It makes a lot of sense. Rocky. Like Mingus isn't like the most popular place in Arizona for people to go, so I can see that being a little brutal to go down. Yeah. It was beautiful up there though, because like Drew and I again, Darby, were up there filming at sunrise, and it was insanely pretty. It was super cool to see all that, and it was a little chilly up there and stuff, whatever. But it was also cool just to see that section. It was just super pretty. And then at that point, we all went down to Jerome, and that's where the aid station wasn't open yet. We got there early enough where it was fine. Everything worked out just fine. Like, how did you feel coming into Jerome? Like, that's where you started Sedona Canyons last year. And I know the routes are a little bit different, but you started day 2 essentially. Like, how'd you feel at that point?
I was feeling pretty worked by there.
Really?
You've just done this rocky downhill. The heat's starting to hit again because Jerome's kind of facing the morning sun. And so it gets beaten on you again, and there's no shade, and you're heading down into Dead Horse, and it's warm. So it was starting to get warm already. My food I was planning on doing, I didn't sound that great because it was hot. I had some heat blisters in my feet, so I doctored those real quick. But that section after Jerome is heinous on the private property. Excuse excuse me. It's really so rocky. I had to walk it on the downhill. It's super steep and it's really loose and gross and junky. But it's just to take you straight down the hillside, down to pick up this kind of like river trail on the Verde River, and you pick up this kind of meandering kind of gravel pathway, and then it kind of takes you over, and before you do the creek crossing into the back of or part of Dead Horse. And I definitely not struggled, but just it was hot. I was definitely like, I felt okay. I was just cruising still, but I definitely was hot in that section.
Yeah, for people who haven't been on the course, like that section, like you get off the mountain and you're kind of in this valley essentially between once you drop off the mountain from Jerome. It's just like it's really flat, like just desert. So it's grassy, but you get to the Verde River and it's nice and cool in there. The water temps felt awesome. I was in there filming you and stuff, and you came in and you took a lot of time to cool off because that section is just open and exposed the entire way. Like the river obviously has trees, and yeah, you spent probably 4 or 5 minutes there just cooling off, which I think is valuable time because you're going to be in this hot exposed section. At that point, it was like 10 in the morning or something. I don't remember exactly the time.
It was warm already.
Yeah. So I think these cooling strategies are important where maybe if there was a 50K, it's yeah, you're not going to stop for that long, but when you still have another day and a half of racing to go, taking those few minutes, it matters. It makes a big difference. It's still
really early in the race too. And you're going into day 2 heat.
Yeah. Just 100% exposed.
Day 2 heat, it hurts a little. After you've been in it all the day before and the second day with only 30 minutes sleep,
yeah,
it's you got to really work on your mindset in that day too.
For sure. And I think the entire Cocodona course overall is awesome. It's really beautiful and I hate saying it, but dynamic. I just hate that phrase for whatever reason. It's just so many different environments, but that section is just kind of awful, but it's a necessity though to get to Sedona.
Yeah.
And you're just in these dry, open, uninspiring places, and it's just hot, sun's beating down on you. And George was saying how warm it was the whole time, and we're at the aid station with ice in the bottles and stuff. So how did you feel coming into was it Deer Pass aid station or Deer something? It's kind of out there. It's the one right before Sedona.
Yeah. Again, that was it was hot and slow. Trying to take care of myself. My watch gave out because I accidentally had Bluetooth still turned on to look for my phone. So somehow one of my headphones weren't paired. So I went to pair it and everything on Bluetooth. And then I was like, oh, it's connected to my watch. No wonder the battery's burning. I thought I had all that stuff off. So somehow I accidentally had that setting on and I didn't realize it. And so then I was frantic because now I have 3 files.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get my Pacers file for that section and edit mine and then try to piece them all together. Kind of annoying on my part. It was my fail though. Again, extreme ownership. It's my fail.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the battery probably would have lasted the whole race. We charged on the 3 naps, but it gets so much more battery life back, especially if you have it on one of the good boxes, the bigger battery packs.
Yeah.
It charges really fast.
Yeah, these kind of high output ones they're pretty awesome now, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which watch were you using, by the way?
My Garmin Enduro 2.
Yeah, it's pretty good battery life in general.
Yeah, and the mapping's really great on it. But I was really bummed because then I didn't have mapping. So then I had to pull my phone out, But that's why you have backup too. Yeah. Right? Redundancy.
Yeah, that would have been super frustrating not have any sort of nav tools and just be relying on the flag.
Yeah, because there have been flags, especially after Sedona. It's a really popular touristy area that get people on it, and it's really popular for mountain bikes. And there were some flags were just gone. It was some intersections completely unmarked. Where we had to get at the intersection and pull our phones out to make sure we were going the right way.
Yeah, that part's kind of fun though. I remember when was I paced Mike McKnight through there a couple of years ago, and then last year when you ran Sedona Canyons 125, there's a section as you're kind of getting into Sedona, you're kind of in this mixture area of like juniper grasslands. I think you run dirt road for a minute. And you have this climb and you can kind of start seeing Sedona for the first real time. You can see it in bits and pieces along the way, but I'm flying drone above it. You can see the cliffs of Sedona. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It was also really windy and hot at that point. I remember my drone was getting whipped around while I was filming you. I was kind of nervous because I crashed quite a bit with my drones.
I've seen you crash it.
Oh yeah. I need to make a super cut of that. Just me crashing my drone.
Yeah.
But you had someone pacing you. I forgot her name, but you were moving along at that point and you were
Rebecca.
So
actually, I coach her. So she paced me from Jerome over to Sedona. And it was a hot section. It was a really hot section.
Yeah, and so as you came in that section, like I know you kind of roll around through a lot of stuff, and you're kind of in the junipers, in and out, like shade, but not a lot of real shade. And you had planned to sleep at Sedona, right?
Yeah. Originally, I had planned to sleep at Sedona, but I got there earlier than I thought. It was still daylight. I was supposed to get in there after dark, so I was ahead of my splits. So I tried to sleep. It kind of was a fail because it wasn't our setup, and it was. But actually, in hindsight, it's a good spot if you're prepared for it because they have an air-conditioned building with cots, and if you could go in there with like the right amount of layers, I would have slept better, and I think I would have run better. In hindsight, I wish I would have planned that one. I would plan it differently next time. I still sleep there, but I'd plan it a little differently because it's a great way to get your core temperature after you've been in the heat because you're still in the heat slightly. And then if you stay there, it lets the sunset get low. And so when you leave, it's like shadows, and so it's not as hot, which is really, really, really nice.
Yeah, like I remember you went in there and I think you were saying something about being cold or something, and like
yeah, because the air conditioning made you chill because you've been in the heat all day.
Yeah,
it was just like my body was starting to like trying to thermal regulate after no sleep at night and whatever you're into there, like 30 some hours.
Yeah, it actually like
or more than that, whatever.
Yeah, I don't even
36. I'd probably be 38 hours in probably by then.
Something like that. Yeah. You started at 5. We started at 5.
Yeah. It was like 7 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Because like the sun was kind of.
It wasn't sunset yet, so it would have been like 5 something.
Yeah,
so I was right. Yeah, 36 hours in or so.
Yeah. I remember like so you went in there and like you're in the lead at this point, and so like you're the only one in there, and so there's just this big open like I don't even know what the building is honestly. It's for something, and you can kind of see the sun coming through the window. So I set up a time lapse to kind of like get that passage of time of you sleeping in there, and when I reviewed it. You slept, or you kind of rolling around a little bit, then you actually sit up for a minute and you go back down. So it didn't seem like you had very restful sleep.
No, it was sucky sleep. Yeah. I figured out in this race like exactly how to sleep, but the anti-gravity chair is where it's at. That's where to take a nap in a race like that. Your feet are bent and you're like heads up slightly. There's a lumbar thing over your neck. And then they can just sit you straight up after you're done napping. It's nice.
That's awesome. I want to get one, honestly. I might stop at REI on the way out and grab one. Yeah, but once you leave, you left the aid station, you look good. Like whatever, like you had your crew there ready to go. You run through Sedona, which is awesome. If people haven't been to Sedona, like it's pretty incredible. Like I see why it's such a big tourist draw. Like the town itself is like, yeah, it's a little town, whatever, and it's kind of funny and funky, but like this is beautiful. Like it's such a beautiful place. And at this point though, you're kind of like you're in high desert and you're traversing Sedona and you drop down to your last like river crossing, which was it Oak Creek?
Yeah.
So I was down there waiting for you, and
I disappointed you with the camera.
You did.
I know you wanted to get me going through the water, but my pacer, who's from Flagstaff, who's also a climber, he came down and scouted it, and he's like, "There's a place to cross if you're nimble enough." He goes, "There's a place to cross to keep your feet dry." I was like, "Dude, if we can do that, let's try it." He goes, "I'll lead you through it." It's right by the rope line. It's right next to the rope line. And so when we came in there, like he goes, "No, I think we can do it." And I'm like, "Oh, I think I can still have some nimble. I'm pretty nimble, And so I was like, "I think I can do it." And I did it. I got through it. I was like stoked. I was like, "Dry shoes. Yes."
Yeah, like I got down there early because I was like, okay, I want to like make this shot awesome. Like I knew you weren't gonna like dunk yourself because you have that climb up Kastner and
it's evening, so you don't need it at that point.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, he's gonna use the rope just to like save energy and stuff. And I was like, had this whole shot planned out in my head, and I was like ready to go. And you guys were just like, nope, screw you, it's the side.
Nope, plan B.
Yeah, but I was also stoked for you though, and you were very like animated about it because it's like, yeah, you have dry feet now instead of having to cross the river. Then have dry like or grimy grit in your feet for that entire climb.
And that climb is steep the last half mile and super rocky and overgrown. And so it's just like it would suck with wet feet.
For sure. And it's just cold too. If you have cold feet, you're just kind of uncomfortable.
And it messes with your core temperature. As soon as you cross, you're like, oh my gosh, I just had cold, and it's evening. So it's not like there's sun to dry you out real fast. So it doesn't dry as fast either. Exactly.
Like for me, I walked in the water. This feels good, but like I also wasn't going to run up to the plateau that evening. I just turned on the heater in my truck. So I think at that point, like obviously, like there's no real cameras out there. It's dark at this point. The sun had just gone down. So like when I filmed you, it was like kind of that blue hour after sunset. You do up the Kastner climb, which is long, or you go up it. And then what's the aid station right there? Is it Muns?
Schnebly. I napped 30 minutes there. in the anti-gravity chair. And that was perfect. Like I crashed out. I had a really good sleep there. And we kind of geared up to leave there with like jacket and hood up, warmed up. Then it was pretty nice temps. And so ended up shedding the jacket and just wearing a base long sleeve and worked our way over to Muns. And I picked up Kevin as a pacer. Mark had brought me up there. And when I picked up him, I went across to, it's just kind of like a rolly, like gravel road, then dirt road, gnarly or rocky 4-wheel drive road up over this little tiny pass. And then you drop down into Muns. So that's all like just dirt roads, double track and gravel road, and then pavement coming into Muns. And I felt pretty good there after a nap, felt good. We cruised through that section, just uneventful through there. You know, it was just like putting the miles behind us to get over to Muns. And I was switching pacers at Muns.
And it seemed like the temps were like fairly good this year, like just moderate in general, because
it was really cold after Muns. Muns to Kelly Canyon was really cold.
Yeah, speaking of that,
I would in hindsight, I would have done more layers.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong then, because in my view, I was like, oh, it's pretty nice.
Well, it was, I mean, I was doing everything to stay warm, like had hood up, jacket on, and was still cold.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really cold through there because there's a lot of little like, kind of like wetlands in that area.
Okay.
And little low spots with moisture, and it's just it's in the Ponderosas and it's cold. Yeah, both. I mean, my pacer and I both were like, we should have brought more layers.
Interesting.
I would have liked pants.
Okay.
I think I would have liked wind pants in that section.
Yeah, it's good to know for the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's what's interesting too. Like,
or one more layer on top. You know, if I would have had one more layer, I'd probably been fine.
Okay.
My legs would have been fine.
Just kind of like an aside real quick. I think it's interesting, like in Arizona, people that aren't from, I guess, Arizona in general or the area or have never been here, they don't really realize how crazy like the temperature swings are here. Like people think of Arizona as just Phoenix where it's hot, like year round basically. But like it's easy to get up high in these places where you're just cold.
I mean, I could see my breath.
That's cold for sure.
At night, like a cloud. It was cold in that section.
Yeah. Interesting. So when you got to Kelly Canyon, I was speaking to Drew, the other filmmaker, for a minute, and it was after, I think it was at Fort Tuttle. And he was saying that you ate like what, canned chicken or something because they didn't have the aid station set up.
They didn't have the aid station set up. I had,
and it's not crewable too.
Yeah, and I was having a little GI stress there, and I was kind of desperate for calories.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of sick of gels, of what I was having. So I really like, I was kind of like, and it wasn't that great. Like I have to say, it was more like emergency. Like I need like protein right now. I think, you know, I needed something, and I took some bags of pretzels. I only ate one of them, but I took a couple bags of pretzels. You know, they didn't have the aid station set up. They had to like put the propane heater on. Like they didn't even have it like lit. You know, they didn't have they didn't have the burner set up yet. It was all still in the case. Everything was boxed. Like they were opening up packages here, pretzels, you know. And we were like, hey, you know, Coke. Like I got some Coke there because I needed caffeine. And it was just, we left there and it was kind of first light.
Yeah, I think that shows like how fast the race was this year and how fast you were running at this point, because it's like the whole time it was like us like as crew and film, we would show up to the aid stations and there's nothing set up. And the fact that you show up to Kelly Canyon and they have nothing set up for you just shows how fast you were running because of, one, the competition. Obviously, like you came out with a game plan to go fast, but then also the temperatures were just so much cooler than years past.
Yeah, especially in the desert. I mean, that easily could have been 10 degrees warmer on day one and day two both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which would make it it would make it probably an hour slower each day. You know, overall, I would guess.
Yeah, and like, so at this point, like myself, like it was dark, so like I don't do much filming at night because it's just headlamps at that point. Like you can't really show too much. So I took a short little nap, and I woke up to George, your crew guy, texting me. He's like, "Hey, can you grab Jeff some Coke?" And I was like, "Why? Like why? When does Jeff ever drink Coke?" Like that was like the thought that ran through my head, and it was 4 a.m.
I just wanted caffeine and sugar.
Yeah, that's what he said.
At that point, I was desperate.
Yeah, so like they were at Fort Tuttle already, so I swung by a gas station, picked up some Coke and stuff, and you came in with your pacer a little after sunrise there. So how were you feeling at that point? Like Fort Tuttle's kind of like, okay, you're in Flagstaff officially now at that point.
It was awesome coming in there because it's my town, it's where I live. So like I know all that, and just coming through, I picked up Buck as a pacer, and I was having breathing issues by then, pretty solid.
Yeah, when did that start?
I think I started to hack during day 2.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember if I was hacking at Fain Ranch the first night. I don't think so.
Maybe, I think you coughed once or twice, but nothing bad.
Nothing bad. It didn't really show up until somewhere later in the day when getting to Sedona. And then at Sedona, I was hacking. And then I was really hacking it when I got up to Schnebly. So that whole section, 160 to 170, 180, I was starting to hack. And I was starting to hear like kind of a wheeze in my voice, and it was like it restricted right at my esophagus and everything. So I definitely got some swelling. And so it was restricting airflow. Because I could breathe in through my nose and I could like get air, but I couldn't through my mouth very well. So it was definitely causing oxygen issues.
Yeah, when you're at like 6,500 feet, you don't want to be having
oxygen
low blood
issues. And when you're running, too,
yeah,
you need oxygen.
And in the lead too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you're leading through there, and like it was interesting showing up there at Fort Tuttle because like it wasn't open either. The aid station is closed, and like it's like a military museum base. Like, I don't know exactly what it is, honestly, but it's kind of just like, okay, there's a big concrete like building, and so George was all set up to crew you. I brought the Coke and stuff, and George like, okay, this is race mode now. Like this is where the race is like beginning. And so you came in, I shot you on the dirt road coming in. You came in, I think you were in and out within like 4 or 5 minutes at that aid station. And part of the reason why is because Harry is moving a little bit faster than you, but he's also taking a lot more time at aid stations. So the strategy was like, okay, like if I'm gonna move a little bit slower on the running, get through the aid stations quicker.
Yeah, my pace was slowing down at that point because of not being able to like breathe.
Yeah.
It took a lot of like mental focus, because I would have to every once in a while just take a hike break and do like lots of deep breathing, like in through my nose, out through my mouth, in through my nose, out through my mouth, get oxygen to the muscles, and then I start running again. It wasn't ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, like
It's the first time that's ever happened in my career, like whatever that was. And I had a cold like 3 weeks out during big block training, and I quit kind of hacking stuff on running about 10 days before the race. So I would guess that I still had a little bit of stuff like lingering down in there that just hadn't worked its way out. And this was just like the dust or something. And after I saw the medics, like it was probably some kind of combo of all those things that just made everything swell up and restrict. And it's probably all the hot air you're breathing too, in the desert.
Yeah.
It was windy.
There's a lot of variables right there. Probably all played in together, and then running 200 something miles.
Yeah, exactly. Asking your body a lot of your body.
Yeah.
And your lungs.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like, I was kind of nervous, honestly, because like you left Fort Tuttle and I went to another spot out kind of the end of the airport area, and I followed you for a ways, and Buck was out there, and like when I was following you with the gimbal, I thought honestly I was just like, oh, Jeff's like running like and nose breathing at this point just to like keep it consistent and strong so you can have a strong finish. And then, because you were kind of like, I could hear the breathing almost like you were having like an asthma attack is kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah, it almost sounds like an asthma attack.
Yeah, and then you turned to me and you explained it, and I was just like, oh crap, like what is going on? Like, this isn't good. And it's also kind of like, on one hand, it's like, I feel for you, like just a friend, but then also like, you might lose the race because of this. And I was nervous because of that, and I was like, this sucks.
He has to go over Eldon still.
Yeah, and I knew that.
Oh,
so, like,
man.
Yeah. So how was that section with Buck? Over to like, was it Walnut?
He just kind of meandered ahead of me and take some walk breaks every once in a while, and I just tried to keep flowing as well as I could. But I kept asking him, "Where's Harry? Where's Harry?" And I was kind of maintaining a pretty consistent gap. And I was thinking, I just got to keep moving. But then I sat at Walnut Canyon just for not very long. But anytime I'd sit and stop, everything would go and restrict back up. And then it'd take like 20 minutes to get everything to open back up so I could inhale through my nose, exhale through my mouth, and get enough air. So I would keep having, I had to walk a lot in the first 20 minutes out of the aid station because it's like, and just wheezing and can't get enough air. And I would stop sometimes and just put my hands on my knees and just go in through my nose, out through my mouth. Oh, I need to get oxygen. oh gosh, it's almost panicky at times.
Yeah, for
feeling.
sure. That's kind of terrifying to like not be able to breathe.
It
Like,
sucked.
it's not fun, especially when you have a big goal in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I remember following you with the drone out of Walnut Canyon, and like you walked, ran, walk, run, walk, run, walk, run. And I was kind of like, what's going on? Because like it was flat at that point and just like dirt road. And it's kind of like, oh boy, like what's going to happen in these next 40 or so miles?
Yeah. So we just tried to focus on like breathing and trying to keep a consistent pace with walk breaks just to bring my oxygen, try to get oxygen. I have to say, because of that, I was kind of dreading the climb up Eldon. I knew it was going to be hard. I knew I was going to be super slow on it because of that. I didn't really realize how slow like it would be. Like I was like, oh my, when I started climbing, I was like, whoa, I'm in trouble. Like, and that's when Harry really started putting time on me.
Yeah, like that section was interesting.
Through that section from Walnut Canyon over, because I was just really struggling to breathe.
Yeah, and like I saw you at 2 points between Walnut and the start of the climb. One spot, I don't remember the name of the road, but some of your family friends were out there. Your youngest son showed up with them, and it was kind of fun to see him randomly out there. He was making fun of me because he always does.
Yeah, totally.
He's a funny little kid. And then Rob Carr was there too to cheer you on. It was cool to see Rob out doing stuff, and it was cool to see all these kids. It seemed like you were pretty animated at that point to like.
I was really stoked, and I was thinking if I can just maintain, but I didn't realize how bad it was going to get going up Eldon.
Yeah. Because like a few miles after that, it's like Sandy Seep or something like that area. Anyways, you kind of jump between like the AZT and stuff. And I was filming you, and you stopped for a moment, like kind of put your hands on your knees, and were just kind of wheezing again. I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh crap! Like, and you have this climb. You can see Eldon like right there. It's pretty ominous. And so were you pretty nervous then at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, man. I mean, I knew I could finish, but I was like, I don't know if I could hold this guy off if I can't like move. Like I can't breathe hard, because I knew Eldon was going to be super hard to go up with that many, it's at like mile 239 or something or whatever, right? It's like a huge climb, 2 mile. It's a 2 mile, like 2,000 feet, more than 2,000 feet, I think.
Yeah, it's a pretty like steep climb, and it's kind of like steppy on some of these rocks.
Really rocky. And I was, and at that point, we had a pulse oximeter afterwards with a medic, and my pulse ox was low. So I guarantee it was low already, but that drove it even lower. And that's why I exacerbated the breathing after Eldon.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Corinne, I don't know how to say her last name, Chalvoy or something. She was up there with like the live stream camera. Bryce Brooks was up there filming some stuff for Airvipa. Dylan, there's a lot of people up there. It was kind of crazy. You had your pacer.
It was crazy.
Yeah. And I was thinking about like extreme ownership too, and like doing your own thing, but having someone there as like support essentially. Kevin was up there pacing you at that point, and he was kind of like, he was nervous. He was telling me afterwards how like you were going up there, and he was like, okay, I'm going to like be here just in case like Jeff like passes out. He like legit was thinking that you might like,
because he knew how bad my breathing was. No one on the camera knew that, but he had seen me like put my hands on my knees and go, I just got to get air. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, it was wild up there. Like I went up there, connected with Dylan real quick. We kind of coordinated our filming and stuff, and Dylan's a super good dude. And
yeah, you guys were like clockwork. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah, it was fun. Like he's a great shooter.
You guys were like in and out, in and bobbing and weaving. It was cool.
You coordinated with your pacers during the race. I coordinated with other filmmakers during the race.
It was awesome.
It worked out really well. But it was interesting to be up there though, with like all 4 of us up there, cameras on you, and Kevin. It was a little crew, and I think the live drone was on you as well. But like it was silent up there. Like the wind was kind of breezy, but you could just hear you going, and like no one was really speaking that much. And it was really interesting. It was a really interesting experience to be up there and like see you pushing so hard, and then knowing that Harry's like what, a half mile away at this point,
half mile behind me,
and Arlen's also, he was running at that point. I remember in the live stream they're saying that Arlen put on like 40 minutes on you guys or something.
Yeah, he took a nap. I think he took like a 30-minute nap or a 40-minute nap, and he was like, he felt like $1 million after that. Yeah. He started running everything. Yeah. It just shows you how important sleep is in these things, even for the front of the pack.
Definitely. So like you were climbing up, like obviously you're not like the race is like mostly downhill at this point. Well, downhill rolly. Harry's behind you, Arlen's there. Everyone's expecting you to win. You want to win, obviously. You're pushing hard. And I think once you hit the top, or you hit these radio towers for a month, then you're on like a maintenance road over to the Eldon aid station. And Corinne said you guys were running like 750 pace off the top of the mountain. Like, how did you feel at that point, knowing you're coming into the last aid station?
Actually, I think she yelled 741 pace.
So 741.
It was faster.
I
took off down that thing because normally in 100 or whatever, my legs felt good. Like, I mean, besides not having enough oxygen because my O2 stat level was really low, but my legs, I felt like I could go downhill because I hadn't run any downhills really hard.
Yeah.
So, and I've done this like a lot of times in hundreds, so I knew like I'm gonna be able to like, I just need to fly off this thing like I normally do. But when you can't breathe, you can't get oxygen to the muscles, you know. So like I have to say it was almost like being drunk, running off of that thing, just because there's not enough oxygen in your brain because your O2 stat level's low. So I just did my normal thing and I got over there, and when I left that aid station, I really was struggling. There was noticeable change after going over Eldon.
Yeah, that was interesting because so I had my truck kind of between the aid and the towers and stuff. So I stopped there for a moment so the live stream guys, so I wouldn't get in their shots essentially. And then so I'm kind of watching the live stream as I'm driving over. And then it seemed like you just kind of went into the aid station, grabbed something and left immediately, right?
Yeah, I was trying to keep going. I got refilled. I put Coke in a bottle, which just ended up not working because it still had a bunch of fizz. And every time I take a drink, then it would just mess with my gut. And like I start burping and everything, so it kind of sucked. So that didn't really work in hindsight. But, you know, I just was trying to get in and out of there. And then was trying to get down the road. And at first I took off hard again. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I've done it before, you know. And again, you know, something you've done a bunch of times. You know, I even hammered off hard rock, you know. And, you know, at the end, some of those big downhills at the last downhills. So I was like, this is way shorter than those. Like, I know this road, like it's my backyard, like I'm just gonna cruise down. And I kept having to stop, put my hands on my knees, inhale through my nose, and I was wheezing like crazy, and I couldn't even get good inhales anymore through my nose. Like, it wasn't awesome. Like, I could tell that it had gone to a different level coming off. And so that, I have to say that was a little like nerve wracking because one, you're like, man, I am like in the lead. Like, what the heck, dude? Why? You know, this can't be happening.
Yeah. And how many miles are left at this point?
Like 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even run anymore. Like, I'm to the point where I'm jogging like 15-minute miles, barely being able to get enough air to not like get lightheaded. And then I'd have to walk, you know, and then I'd have to put my hands on my knees and try to get air. You know, especially if I'd run a section, I'd try to run a section and I'd have to stop, put my hands on my knees and like inhale through my nose. I'll try to get some in and then get going again. I walk.
Yeah. At that point, I was pretty stressed. Like, the whole day was just kind of like, you're kind of on edge. At least all of us crew people were. And like, this is kind of funny. Like, when I was leaving the aid station, so I was like in my truck. I forgot the name of the woman who's like the aid station captain. She runs over to me. She's like, hey, just so you know, there's a box truck stuck at this hairpin turn on the road down Eldon. I'm like, oh, that sucks because now I can't go to the finish. And so I was trying to like navigate, not dusting you guys out, not getting in the live stream, and getting down to this pin, like this on the corner, see if I can get through. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because I might have to run to the finish line at this point, like in jeans.
Oh, gosh.
And so I was freaking out. And so I tried to pass you guys as slowly as I could. And I get to that spot, and like on the way down, I guzzled a liter of water because I'm like, I might have to just run to the finish. It's like 5 or 6 miles or something. And then I like ate a bunch of food real quick. I'm like, I'm just gonna like prep to go for a run real quick, and ended up just being able to get by the box truck just barely. Like, it was kind of a sketchy move, but some guys were there and helped me out, and we made it through just fine. And then going to the finish, like, it was crazy because like Kevin's kind of updating live streams there, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. We know that Harry's putting a move on you, Arlen's climbing, and like, it kind of seems like in 200s in the past, minus Moab 240 last year, it's like people just kind of run away with the race, and there's like, okay, 5-6 hours until the second place guy comes in.
Yeah.
This was like essentially like a photo finish of a race.
Nail biter.
It was wild. So like, so things kind of started falling apart. I think Kevin called George called me, and we like kind of freaked out. Where and what was that experience like when Harry passed you? Like, what were you guys doing at that point?
There's a little wash right behind Buffalo Park. So you go to the back of Buffalo Park and it goes down the single track trail to a wash that's in the National Forest. So it's like borders right against the back of Buffalo Park. You come down onto that trail in this wash and then start climbing this slow little, you know, short uphill. and then you come into some rocky single track and then into Buffalo Park. And I just started that climb. I look over my shoulder and here comes Harry running. And I just sat on a log and was like, yelled at him when he came up. And I said, the win's yours, bro. And he said, what happened? And I was like, listen, and I started wheezing, and he stopped, gave me a hug and said, you deserve this win, which I thought was really cool of him. Shows what the camaraderie you have in this sport, you know, of racing guys and putting it all out there and just going hard. I thought that says a lot about just his reaction. He gave me a long hug. Like, we don't know each other. Like, we, you know.
Yeah, had you met before?
No.
So it's your first real like physical interaction.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Besides our quick interaction at Camp Kippa when I passed him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. Like, I just said, hey bro, you know, hang in there, you know, and or whatever or something. I don't remember. But then he said that, and then he, you know, obviously took off. And then from there it was like, where's Arlen? We looked on the tracker. He was just, when I walked into Buffalo Park, we looked on the tracker and he was just getting to the top of Eldon. I was like, we can walk this all the way. Like, we don't have to run. I was like, at this point, I didn't want to do any more damage on my lungs. I was already breathing sucked. I couldn't run. So it just walked. I called my wife. She started crying. I got a little teary eyed, but I was fine. At that point, you're just tired and I just wanted to breathe. And so they walked backwards on the course to meet me. And walk me in. So, and some of my pacers showed up too.
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience. Like, we were all at the finish line just expecting you to run it in, like maybe like slowly, but run it in and win the race. And then hearing that he had passed you, and then knowing everything going on, and then that phone call and then subsequent phone calls, and then like walking back on the course and like seeing that. And then, so we're walking up the road, we kind of passed the hospital to I don't remember the name of the highway. And then we could see Harry and his pacer coming in, and we're just like, oh crap. And so like, I have this shot of George and Jen on one side of the road, and then I see Harry and them coming in. It's like kind of this weird, interesting part of the story where like they're walking out to meet you and he's coming in to win the race. And then we walked up to Buff Park and we saw you, and it was like, it was probably one of the most emotional like experiences I've ever had at a race. Like, not necessarily for myself, but like just seeing that interaction with you and Jen, like one, like a sigh of relief on her face, but then also like, okay, this is just a cool like bonding experience. Like, not how we all wanted the race to play out, and seeing like last 2 miles.
No, we still
like
we still had a second fastest time on the course ever and crushed the course record. So like, you know, it was way, hours and hours and hours ahead of the old course record. And dang it, I have to say it's bittersweet though.
Yeah, it's not how we all wanted it to play out, but it was really inspiring though to like see you guys all interact, see the crew dynamic there, see like just the love for everybody.
And it's Flagstaff, so a bunch of my friends were at the finish line.
Yeah,
a bunch of people out on the course, standing up by the hospital. They were working today.
Yeah.
So they were like, my neighbor across the street's a nurse, and he was like at the intersection with another group of nurses up at the hospital. So I got to see a lot of people. So Jamil and I got teary-eyed. He got teary-eyed. He was like, dude. He gave me a hug. And then started filming me for the live feed.
Yeah.
He immediately went right back to work.
Jamil's so funny like that, where he can just like switch his things and go from like, oh, I care for you, and I got to film and do work.
Yeah, I got to go back to work. He goes, okay, I'm going to film you now.
Yeah. There were so many people out there, people driving by, like just, I don't know who they were, just like, yeah, go Jeff.
Yeah,
and
honking.
whatever. People were stoked. And then Rob was out there again. Jim came out on his bike and saw you. And just seeing like the support of all these people that followed the race so intensely and cared for you so much. And to see like, I guess before I even mentioned it, like, what was that like? Like, so all this happens. We walk through the streets for however many miles it is, like 1.5 miles or something.
2 miles.
Yeah. And then you get into the square where the finish line is, and like you kind of round this corner. What was that experience like to round it with your wife and then seeing your family there? And it felt like the entire city of Flagstaff was there waiting for you.
It was really cool. Like, just to take it in, like everybody, you know, I had pacers there that had paced me earlier in the day. You know, the first person I saw on the right was Buck, and so I gave him a hug and told him I appreciated him and thanks for helping me. And then I saw my kids, gave them a hug, and some good friends of theirs and Mars were at the finish line. It was good. I mean, it's still good. Like, even though like it doesn't go as planned, and that's the story of life, man. Things don't always go as planned, and you have to, you just have to roll with it and be okay with it and look for the good stuff in it. And it was really cool to see that support, all my friends coming out and seeing it, helping, and the concerned, and that it made it a good race too. Like, it's a nail biter at the end, and they don't always go exactly according to plan. So, but it still makes a good story, and to make a good memory too. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, it sounds weird to say it, but like it's almost more memorable to have it pan out this way than just to go run away with the race and win it and set a course record. Like, it was a very memorable experience. The number of messages that I got, and then like Jen was like, I think I have like 1 million messages on my phone because her phone was just like vibrating in her purse from the number of text messages she was getting.
Yeah,
like,
I had 96 texts last night. I hadn't read.
It was wild. Like, that was such an emotional experience. And like, I don't know, it was probably the most exciting. Yeah, probably one of the most like amazing experiences I've seen like at the end of a finish line before. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ran one heck of a race, and like leading for that long.
Oh, for so long. I started leading it like I was thinking back. I'm trying to think how far out the Dells are. I think Iron King's like 89 or 90, maybe.
I'll look it up right now.
I think I took the lead in the early 90s.
Yeah, so that's
when Joe and I kind of crossed paths. 150
miles essentially of leading the race to get past essentially in Flagstaff, like right out of Buff Park. Like,
yeah, it was like 157 miles. That's a long way to lead a race.
It was a long.
Well, I can't. I could subtract 2 miles at the end too.
Yeah,
You passed me.
I think
So
it's
155. We'll say 155 ballpark.
Yeah, ballpark. We'll round their average or whatever. I think it kind of shows too, like, one, like we should give like props to Harry for just being such a classy guy, and like, one, he ran a really smart race and did really well. It was exciting.
It really meant a lot that he said what he said.
Yeah.
I mean, we duked it out. You get a lot of respect for someone when you go hard,
Mhm.
and you're performing, and they're performing, and you're like, dang, this dude's tough. He's not giving up.
Yeah.
Right? Every time I think I broke him, he's back again. So it's awesome when you have that kind of competition. It pushes you to go really fast. Like, we ran fast,
Yeah.
So it's cool to have that.
Yeah, and like, I think on top of that, it just shows like how much potential there is for running faster 200s, where initially it was kind of like people were figuring them out, like how fast can you run a 200 is like, oh, I'm gonna take a shower, like clean up all these things at events and like have all this stuff. And now it's like, it's almost becoming like Western states where it's just like, don't even stop at aid stations, just kind of roll in and roll out.
Yeah, you crew fast.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it is, like in a slightly different sense at a 200 now. It's like these minutes matter, and the competition's getting better, and it makes the sport more exciting, where it's not just a hiking race anymore. It's like a legit running race.
Yeah.
It's cool.
There's a lot of running.
A lot of running. Yeah, and I don't know, like, I think we all knew coming into the race it was just going to be stacked in a crazy race, and like having Arlen out here, Mike McKnight, who had the prior course record, Versteeg, Jeff Garmeyer, who's just like an amazing like through hiker, just great guy. You racing. I didn't know who Harry was honestly before.
I didn't either.
Anastasia, one of the photographers, was telling me about him, and I was just like, oh, like this guy's legit.
I knew he was tough.
Yeah, and he was.
And
he is.
He ended up being, yeah, big time tough.
Yeah, super good race, but man, that was fun. Like, I'm glad we all got to sleep a little bit last night. I'm glad the kind of like the endorphin adrenaline rush is over. We could all kind of relax. I think last night we're all kind of, I don't want to sound like hyperbolic, but a little shell shocked almost. Like,
oh,
just
totally.
Like, holy cow! Like, what just happened?
What just happened? That wasn't what we expected.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. I'm excited to see like how 200s advance in the future, how they play out, but then also to see like what you end up doing now, so in the future. Like,
yeah.
the films are going to be great. Like, the film we're working on with Ultra, I think is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's going to be interesting to see that from our view of the story and longevity in the sport, because you were racing guys that were like 20s and 30s, right? Like super young guys. You're 52 now, but then also the film that Jamil is putting together with Dylan and these other guys is going to be really fun to watch too, to see more of like the race story play out. Whereas this film I'm working on is more of like the longevity aspect in the sport. It's like two different but awesome, amazing stories.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be fun.
I'm excited for both of them.
Me too.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun. So anyways, man, we'll wrap it up here.
Giddy up.